Crit Olaf, a pick that has insane burst damage, comboed with invulnerability to CC, as well as a surprising item that confuses enemies and keeps Olaf alive for way too long, with a ton of pentakills and even some trolling of his teammates. Meet Rank 1 Olaf, our player who hits Challenger with a new off-meta crit one-shotting build. This is the perfect lane-dominating pick for solo queue, with insane scaling thanks to all the crit damage. And it's honestly very easy to play. Even an Iron player can pull off this stand still and auto-attack the enemy to death combo. But seriously, I've never had a player send me so many pentakills. This guy just keeps getting them every day and sending them to me. I'll try and fit as many into this video as I can. But first, let me tell you how to win more League games with just one small change. This is Porofessor, a League of Legends overlay app that can literally help you win more often, thanks to a new OP feature. This new feature is Summoner Spell Tracking. The app displays all of the enemies and their summoner spells, and whenever someone uses one, you can easily click on the in-game overlay to start a timer, which will exactly track their summoner cooldown, so you can then easily kill them, since you know they have no flash. This feature instantly makes you a better player with no skill required, and it also syncs up with other Porofessor users. And another new feature, if you ever want to scout your enemies, but you don't want to tab out and have to go to some external site, you can just click their name in the in-game overlay, see all of their stats if they're on a loss streak, and be ready to focus them to win the game. This is all on top of all of their other time-saving helpful features, like automatic rune selection and champ select. It even has some of the off-meta picks from our videos, like Tank LeBlanc in top lane, the custom builds you get in-game, showing you exactly what to build to have the highest chance of winning, stats analysis after game so you can see why you lost and how you can improve, and so much more. If you don't have Porofessor by now, you're trolling. Download it right now from the link in the description. Just a couple clicks and immediately you can start winning more games. But back to rank 1 Olaf, who is actually rank 36 Olaf in the world, but none of the players above him play with a crit build, so I'd say he's really rank 1 Crit Olaf. And the crazy thing about this player is that even though top is now Olaf's most popular role, this guy started playing it all the way back in Season 6, when it was really unpopular. Even back then he was building something ridiculous, with first item Infinity Edge right away in lane. Since Season 6, he's played thousands of games of Crit Olaf, adapting his build for each season, but his goal has always been the same: get as much damage as possible as early as he can. He told me the main goal of this pick is shocking enemies with the damage, and beating them unexpectedly. You don't need to care about matchups when you can just burst any champion down instantly in a fight. This is a much more chill and fun way to play top lane. With this really confident playstyle came a little bit of toxicity. On his way to Challenger, he ended up with over 20 banned accounts, having a serious typing problem. In his words, "If someone goes 0-20 in my game, then I call him not a good player. Personally, I think if you've got 20 accounts banned, it's probably a little worse than that." But anyway, on with the story. Even with all of these bans, thanks to his full crit build and this confident playstyle, he hit Challenger multiple times, and is currently on his way back there again, of course on a fresh new account. But how does this full damage style work? Well, Crit Olaf top is really strong because of his ability to easily get kills in lane, and then rapidly snowball the game with his huge amount of damage. So rank 1 Olaf has a special game plan to do this, even using Rift Herald by himself to snowball even faster. At level 1 he's already using the strength of his champion, sitting in this top bush and waiting for his prey. He waits for the enemy to get to the wave and then throws an axe out of the bush, not only killing the 3 melee minions, but also tagging the enemy for some poke, and setting up an immediate all-in. Level 1 is one of Olaf's strongest points in top lane, because he can't lose a 1v1 thanks to his super low axe cooldown whenever he picks it back up, as well as the free lifesteal and attack speed from his passive that ramps up as he loses health. Early on you dominate lane in almost every melee matchup. Enemies cannot trade with you, and they can't even CS without you threatening them with an axe. Olaf kills minions with his Q and tries to tag the enemy at the same time to get some poke, taking E at level 2 for easier trades, and W at level 3 to give him the attack speed and shield to make your 1v1s even better. This is the easiest part of the game for Olaf. You're automatically ahead early game because of how strong this pick is. It's almost like you load into the game already snowballing, because it's so easy to just get one kill and then grow your lead rapidly to take over the game. Once you poke the enemy down, Olaf can even look to dive, keeping up his poke with the axe, and finishing the enemy off with auto attacks into E for the final hit, as the E goes off even if enemies flash away. Honestly, there are no special tricks to win fights with this pick. It's incredibly simple to play. All you have to do is hit an axe, press ult, and auto attack the enemy until they die. This makes it a perfect pick even for low elo, as there aren't any complex combos, so you can focus all of your brain space on other things like CSing or looking at the map. Also, with the new rework, his ultimate got so much better. With old Olaf, when you pressed ult you would lose resistances, making him easier to kill, and this was in exchange for him being immune to CC. A pretty well designed ability. But now, Olaf gains resistances as well as movement speed and AD on top of the CC resistance. So this ability is now just crazy, dodging CC and gaining stats with no downside, getting even stronger with his first base, buying Serrated Dirk. This item's strange on Olaf, but it is really good early on, because enemies won't have any armor yet, so it's even more effective. And your 1v1s just become too easy. Top lane is often called the lowest impact lane, as it's so far away from the main action, and sometimes it can feel like the game is over before you can do anything. But this Olaf has found a way to make sure this never happens to him. Firstly, he constantly pressures top lane to try and draw the enemy jungler to him. If they don't come, he can win top lane and get kills. If they do, he's happy to look for a 1 versus 2, knowing he can get at least 1 kill and make it an even trade. Meanwhile, his jungler can get dragon. But if he ever sees the enemy jungler in bot side, he instantly invades their jungle and starts stealing camps. He's really healthy in the jungle and can quickly and safely clear the camps. But of course, our player is much too confident to leave, so he stays around to look for a solo kill. Since already he has so much damage, a 1v1 is not hard, getting him even further ahead and ruining the enemy jungler's game. But now is where he starts to get a bit unique. Our player's game plan is to get a 1 versus 1 kill, and then start taking tower plates. He wants to take 3 tower plates by 8 minutes, letting him rush down to Rift Herald and solo it himself. Since he's already taken some top lane plates, he can then return to the lane and use Rift to instantly kill tower, collecting a crazy amount of gold, which he instantly bases to spend on his first item, buying Immortal Shield Bow. This item is really perfect for Olaf because it gives him an insane amount of burst damage, but also the survivability and lifesteal, so whenever enemies get him low and think he's about to die, Olaf becomes like a boss fight, activating stage 2, gaining a shield from the item and a shield from his W, also having his attack speed and lifesteal shoot up, meaning the fight can completely turn around. With this power spike, Olaf immediately goes to bot lane, even teleporting to his teammate's tower and taking over the lane, literally just walking at the enemy AD carry under tower and 1-comboing him, then getting more tower plates. Honestly, this is a psychopath play that can easily tilt your teammates, but since Olaf is so stupidly strong by this point, his damage is enough for it to be worth the risk. It's just as likely the enemy team will FF as your own team will, but luckily Olaf can keep getting advantages and deny this surrender vote from his team, while continuing to tilt the enemies and getting further ahead. From this point, Olaf keeps playing aggressive, taking over the game. He stays bot lane to force tower and try and get all of the plates. If the enemy top lane comes to try and kill him, then Shield Bow is perfect for baiting them in and turning the fight around, getting a very quick kill even against tanks. From now on, the enemy top laner simply cannot 1v1 you. You have removed them from the game, and if they try, they're going to be dead in a few seconds. And I didn't even mention why Olaf's invulnerability is so good on his ult with this build, and that is because he's already a very good diver who can't be peeled, but now he also has the damage to kill everyone, so he no longer needs to stick on top of enemies to finish them off. He can just quickly auto them a few times and burst them down. There is literally nothing bot laners can do to kill you. Olaf can easily go into a 1 versus 2, avoiding all the support CC and not really taking any damage. As long as you can land your axe slow, they're already dead. If you can't CC him, you can't tank his damage, and you can't flash away from him because he can just flash after you, then there's no way to stop Olaf from running you down. So things like a Riven Stun or an Ash Arrow are literally useless abilities in fights, giving him not only a damage advantage, but also an ability advantage, taking away vital parts of enemies' kits. The only roles that even stand a chance at killing you are mid lane and jungle. Bot lane are too weak, and the enemy top lane should be really far behind. But it also requires a DPS champion with mobility, so they have enough damage to kill you through your healing, and also kite you. With all of those requirements, it's such a tiny pool of champions that can even hope to fight you in a 1v1 or a 1v2. And let's not forget, this is when Olaf is by himself. If he has a support to shield him, or teammates for CC, it'll be even harder. Once Olaf has gotten all of the outer towers, he likes to be in a side lane, so he can focus on taking these 1v1s. And although he hasn't built any resistances, he does have lots of lifesteal, and is a much higher level than anyone else. So he's already actually quite hard to kill. If enemies don't focus you down quickly, you can just kill all of them. Olaf then even buys a Zeal, just for the movement speed, with the damage as a bonus, then buying Collector as his next item, really going all in on the burst, quickly killing enemies from full health. Olaf as a champion shouldn't be very hard to kite, since he has no mobility, but since his axe slows for 45% for a full 2.5 seconds, that's practically a hard CC, and so he can use that in a side lane to run you you down, and then throw another one if you ever get too far away. Ideally he wants to keep splitting and keep finding these 1v1s because he can't really lose them, but at some point he will have to teamfight. So Olaf keeps this mentality in teamfights, not running into a group of people but instead trying to split up enemies into 1v1s. If he can do this, he can kill one enemy at a time, over and over again, and use that to win the fight. There's only really one way that enemies can play these fights, and that's to run away from you. If Crit Olaf reaches anyone, they die, and this includes tanks once he gets Lord Dominic's. He can just crit through their resistances, so enemies have to use all of their mobility to dash away and avoid you at all costs. Any target you can reach will be shredded in just a few hits, thanks to your crits and high attack speed, so you will never lack the damage to carry. Some fights you'll be the DPSer, and some fights you'll need to assassinate the enemy's main carry, and so that is why flash is so important in this playstyle, as you need to really quickly close the gap and kill them before they can do anything. With this full glass cannon build, whenever you get into a fight you're not going to be able to leave, so you better be ready to go all in every single time. Any aggressive move you make, any time you get caught, or any time you get collapsed on, the only play you have is to go in and try and kill everyone. You don't have the mobility to escape, but what you do have is the damage to kill 5 people, so really the only thing you can do is go in and try and get some kills. And in lots of situations it does work, especially in late game where this pick becomes a monster with a full crit and even infinity edge. Olaf can't quite one-shot people, but a 2-hit kill is still pretty good. This is where he becomes a pentakill machine, collecting kill after kill, working really well with enchanter support to boost his movement speed and let him reach enemies easier. I would call this playstyle a juggernaut, as it has the damage to kill probably 100 enemies in a row, life-stealing from minions between each one, and only lacks the mobility to do it, so a good support can fix that. And of course he couldn't win games without this super complicated Olaf kill combo that he uses in every single fight. You see, he stands still and hits the enemy until they die. Really you don't need anything special, because there's no champion in the game that can output this much DPS on a single target in a fight. It's really on the enemies to try and outplay you, or outnumber you, and if they can't do that then they lose. Since this playstyle is all in on getting stupidly high damage, this pick does have some obvious downsides. The lack of mobility and partially the squishiness are his biggest ones. If Olaf isn't able to reach an enemy, he can't use any of the items he spent thousands of gold on. It's not like his axes do crit damage, he has to be in melee range to auto attack. So if enemies pick high mobility and Olaf doesn't get a lead, then this build won't be a very good carry. Another potential problem is if enemies group up into a ball in teamfights, refusing to let Olaf split them up into 1v1s, since with this build he can't just run into a group of enemies without getting bursted. Fortunately neither of these are perfect counters, with high mobility champions often having lower damage, and thus finding it much harder to get through all of his lifesteal, and the teamfight ball comps are also very vulnerable to AoE damage, so if Olaf has a mage mid laner they can usually take care of the whole enemy team. For how easy and how effective this pick is, it needs a very high rating for all Elos. If you're laning top against an Olaf, it's not like you're playing top lane, it's basically an auto loss and you just need to find a way to recover from it, and that fact alone makes this pick very good. For his full Crit Olaf build, you already know most of it, but here's the rest. Starting with as much damage as he can get, cooldown boots for more axes and making more plays. He buys the Zeal mid game for the movement speed and the crit, but then he sells it later on so he can fit in Death Stance. This is the one tanky item he buys to make it harder for enemies to one-shot him, and don't forget the Lord Dominic's so he can shred through even tanky champions. This gives him more options, so instead of only being able to dive squishies, he can now kill anyone who's near him. He bans Tryndamere every game, as this is the only champion who can 1v1 him after level 6 in top lane. His runes are this lethal tempo page, making him much stronger in early fights in lane, as well as in long team fights. This player doesn't have anything he wanted to promote in this video, so please check out our sponsor, Porofessor. If enough people try out his build in solo queue, then the build will be added to their recommended items, so let's spread some chaos. Thanks so much for watching.